Running on Air by 11ty7, Chapter 8, Part 2. He asks Narcissa, a date is set. She thinks he's doing a routine visit just to assure her the case is still being actively managed. Wednesday, the 14th of January. It's been 3 weeks now since Harry last saw Draco, standing in the apartment, looking little more than a fading ghost. Will he ever come back? Harry drinks the Felix Felicis 1 hour before he leaves. 12 hours of liquid luck. He has to pause a moment to let the feeling of carefree euphoria wash over him as he downs the potion. Then he heads towards the front door, planning to disapparate once he's outside the door, but somehow he just keeps walking. To the Renault Megane. It will take 2 hours to drive to the manor, but Harry doesn't feel particularly concerned about this. He'll just be 2 hours late, that's all. The Renault is recovering well from its 3-year abandonment, and the engine purrs smoothly when Harry starts the car. He pauses for a moment, then reaches for the map kept in the glove box. Why not take a scenic route to Wiltshire? He'll be 2 hours late anyway. What's another hour matter? Draco has drawn a line along the coastal roads. Draco likes the coast, Harry thinks. Liminal places, people are drawn to those sorts of areas where lines are blurred and dualities are drawn. Land and water, but not quite both. Not quite either. He places his hands on the steering wheel, one hand on each of the faintly worn patches where Draco so often rested his own hand, and he drives. He arrives at the manor just as the sun is setting. An anxious-looking house elf answers the door and stares at him. "I have a meeting with Narcissa," Harry says pleasantly, tapping the Renault's keycard against his palm.
"Please be waiting in the reception hall,"
the house elf says, bowing hurriedly.
"I will be fetching the mistress, yes?"
The elf backs away, then scurries up the sweeping staircase. Harry's left on his own devices in the reception hall. Wonders if anyone has ever been hours late to an appointment with Narcissa Malfoy. Normally he'd sit uncomfortably on the antique chairs nearby, but this time he unconcernedly wanders around the hall. There's a row of framed photographs of the Malfoy family on the hall table, and he scrutinizes them closely. In the first few, a young Draco is smiling proudly between his parents. As Draco ages, however, the smile slowly disappears, and the distance between all 3 Malfoy lengthens until the very last photo. Taken just before Lucius disappeared, Harry would wager. Lucius is standing on the far left of the photograph. Draco is standing on the far right. Narcissa is between them, looking helplessly from one to the other. As Harry watches them, Lucius glances at Draco and reaches towards him. Draco gives him a look of cold anger and edges farther away until he's nearly disappeared entirely from the picture. Footsteps on the stairs. Harry glances up. Narcissa walks towards him, one hand trailing along the banister. "You're late," she observes. "I'm sorry, I decided to drive her instead." "I saw." Narcissa descends the rest of the stairs and stands on the last step, one hand still resting on the banister and the other rising to touch at her necklace. "When I saw the car, I thought, for a moment, Draco was coming home." "I'm sorry." Narcissa shakes her head. "Foolish thoughts." "I took a scenic route through Portsmouth. It's nice driving the coast this time of year. Not much traffic." Narcissa looks at him for a long moment, then glances away. "Perhaps," she says slowly, "that's why I allowed you to have the car." "Why?" She inclines her head slightly towards the drawing room. Harry wonders if the motion is conscious or not. "You remind me of him. Strange, isn't it? But I think Draco would have liked to see his car being driven by someone who—" She trails off and moves away, perhaps to call the house elf, but Harry quickly intervenes. "Someone who likes driving, too. Someone who takes a scenic route." Harry smiles. "I went to Cornwall, tracing Draco's last journey. Have you ever seen the southernmost point of British mainland?" Narcissa gazes at him for a long moment, then clears her throat. As if responding to an unspoken command, The anxious-looking house elf reappears by her side. "Refreshments?" Narcissa says, and the house elf bows low before vanishing again. Narcissa sweeps away, leaving Harry to follow until they enter a formal sitting room. Harry looks around the room. There's plenty of spaces to sit, but he opts to walk over to the window. Narcissa is silent, but Harry doesn't feel the need to speak. He waits, staring out over the manor grounds until the house elf appears again. He doesn't turn from the view, waiting as he hears the clink of glasses and the fading footsteps of the house elf. "Draco would be furious to hear me speak of it," Narcissa says. The sun is nearly set and he can see her reflection in the dark window. She's looking at him with an expression of sadness, he thinks, that if she knew he could see her expression, she would quickly hide it. "But there is something about you that I see in him too." "Oh, I don't think Draco would feel angry about the comparison," Harry says, and surprise flits over Narcissa's face. "Perhaps," she allows. He walks to the tray of glassware and picks up a highball tumbler filled with some sort of clear beverage and garnished with lime. Gin and tonic, Harry thinks. "In inceptio finis est," he says, and Narcissa starts. "I know of a saying similar to that. I open at the close." He shoves his hand in his pocket, studying Narcissa's reflection in the window. The stars are coming out now, cold and white, against the dark January sky. "I remember that night, the night of the battle. I walked to my death, but I wasn't alone. I remember the spirit of my mother walking alongside me." Turns around, leaning his back against the cold glass of the window. "Do you think Draco ever felt he walked alone?" Narcissa turns away from him. "You have no right to ask these questions," he says in a low voice. But Harry can hear the tremor beneath her words and knows he struck a nerve. "I did my best for Draco." "And what about Lucius?" Harry remembers the photograph downstairs. "By the time he disappeared, I'd wager that Draco barely spoke to him." Narcissa takes a long sip of gin and tonic, and she seems inclined to rebuke Harry for speaking of such personal matters. However, she catches sight of the Renault keycard in Harry's hand and seems to change her mind. "They argued," she says at last. "Draco always adored his father and used to listen to every word. I think it was very difficult for Lucius to have Draco suddenly withdraw. I think Lucius expected everything to be the same after the war, but after the battle, Draco wouldn't talk to us. There was just so much distance, and it felt like Draco was so close to just leaving completely. Lucius took it badly, told Draco to pull himself together. I'm afraid he became quite angry with Draco, but the angrier he became, the more Draco retreated." "Until?" Harry prompts, and Narcissa looks away. "I'll give you the memory," he says at last, "if only because for a moment I thought it was Draco returning home when I saw the car. And you gave me that moment, if nothing else, so I'll give you the memory." And lifting a wand to her forehead, she lets wisps of silver drift in the air. Possibly, Harry thinks, the final piece of the puzzle. He leaves the manor soon after, retracing the same route. The vial is heavy in his pocket, and it's a long drive back to Ron and Hermione's house. Hermione answers the door, a mug of tea in one hand. "I need a pensieve," he tells her. She yawns, looking unsurprised. "In Ron's study. He uses it for work." "I'll need to destroy the memory afterwards." "All right." He appreciates her lack of question, or perhaps she's too absorbed in her work. She soon retreats to a pile of books in the sitting room, and Harry makes his way to Ron's study. The study has a slight chill to it, for the warming charms, concentrated around the busier parts of the house, are less effective here. Within moments, he's immersed in the memory. The first thing he hears is Draco's voice, raised and angry. "I won't do it! I will not run away!" The surroundings construct themselves around Harry. He's standing in a hallway, most likely in the manor. Narcissa is beside him, listening intently. Eavesdropping, he realizes. The raised voices are drifting from a room just across from them, the door slightly ajar.
You are being very ungrateful, Draco,
Lucius is saying angrily.
I have spent quite an amount of money preparing the estate in Crete.
Draco laughs bitterly.
I'm sure you have. You are being very obstinate.
Lucius snaps.
This is an opportunity, Draco. Stay here if you wish, hiding in the manor where those who will seek revenge cannot harm you, and when you are tired of that caged existence, I will contact the appropriate people and organize your journey to Crete. I am doing this to protect you and your mother.
If you want to protect your family, father, I suggest investing in a time-turner and reconsidering some key choices you made 12 years ago.
And you made some choices of your own, as I recall.
Narcissa flinches.
I was only 16,
Draco says, fury coursing through his voice.
Old enough to show some responsibility for your own actions, Draco. Your decision to accept the dark mark was yours alone, as I recall. Your mother advised against it, and I did not comment on that matter.
There is a long silence. Then Lucius speaks again, sounding impatient.
And now you're sulking again, I see. I've had enough of this childish behavior. Tomorrow I leave for Crete. You and your mother will stay here for 3 months until the ministry's attention has since moved on, and then you will receive communication from a reliable contact, and you will travel to Crete.
There is another long silence. Harry, desperately wanting to see Draco's face, moves closer to the door and peers into the room. But as Narcissa herself never witnessed the scene, the room is nothing but a beige-colored blur.
The day the war ended,
Draco says at last,
I promised myself I would never take orders from anyone ever again.
And then the door is swinging open and Draco strides straight through Harry as if he's a ghost. Harry stumbles back automatically and then watches Draco disappear down the hallway. He nearly forgets that the memory belongs to Narcissa, but then Narcissa is stepping through the doorway and staring at Lucius. The room sharpens into view. A study with an oak desk in one corner and 2 armchairs by a marble fireplace.
You should not have spoken to him like that,
Narcissa says. Harry can't tell whether she's sad or angry. Lucius looks a lot older than Harry remembers. His face is more lined and he looks tired.
I am doing this for you and him, Narcissa. Draco may be angry now, but he will thank me when he's older.
He is older. Our son is 22 years old, Lucius, not some disobedient child to be lectured and sent away. Lucius sinks into one of the armchairs.
You were always better at dealing with his moods. His moods? Lucius, he's been in a war. As have we all,
Lucius says sharply. After a long moment, he looks away.
I cannot afford any errors. In 3 months, make sure Draco comes to Crete with you.
Narcissa studies her husband. Unfortunately, she says, Draco is his own person. We no longer control his choices. Lucius says nothing. Narcissa turns and leaves, and the memory fades. Harry surfaces from the Pensieve and decides to drive. Somewhere. Anywhere. He doesn't know why, but the Felix Felicis, fading from his body but still there, seems to know. So he allows the potion to control his decisions. He stands and walks out to the car, the gravel crunching under his feet. He touches a hand to the chilly handle and pulls the car door open, then slides into the driver's seat and rests his hand on the wheel.
We could go anywhere,
he says quietly. There is no response, only silence, but he expected that. He starts the engine. To be continued.